we're going to get started with our Women in STEAM panel now. I'm Chloe, I'm the co-lead director for this issue. And to keep things more organized, we're going to follow the order of STEAM. So first we're going to have science, then tech, engineering, art, and then math. So for the panelists, to start out, can each of you please introduce yourselves and also tell us more about your career? So Jupiter, would you like to go first?
My name is Jupiter Jones. I am the S part of STEAM. I am in theoretical astrophysics at my university. I hope to go on and get my PhD. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And yeah, so currently I'm just learning, trying to go on to the next level. And then I also do Women in STEM ambassadorship through the Possum 13, and then I'm also a scientist astronaut candidate through the Possum Project.
Awesome. So Mayuko, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sounds good. Hi, everybody. My name's Mayuko. I'm the T part, so tech part. So I'm a software engineer. I didn't do any CS before high school at all, and then I went to UC San Diego to study computer science to get my degree there. Since then, I've been working for about 6 years. I worked at Intuit as part of their rotational program for early career. And then I worked at Patreon for a couple of years, a startup in San Francisco, and most recently I was at Netflix. Currently, I'm based in San Diego, California, and I also have a YouTube channel to talk about life as a software engineer, providing advice about career and things about tech and also lifestyle stuff. So I'm glad to be here.
What's the name of your YouTube channel?
If you look up my name, you'll find it. Mayuko.
Okay. Thank you.
Kat, would you like to go next?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everybody. My name is Kat. And first of all, I am in the car, as you can tell. So if I have any connection issues, just make sure to leave it in the chat and I'll repeat anything that you may have missed. So I am an electrical engineer at NASA's, most recently part of as an intern. And then right now I am working on the Europa Clipper project, which is an orbiter we're going to be sending to Jupiter to study Jupiter's moon Europa. So it's a really, really exciting mission. I'm very excited about it. And just a little bit of background about how I got to my career. When I was in high school, I didn't really have the money to go to college. So I stayed back. I decided I was going to help my family. I took a job at McDonald's and enrolled in the community college near my house. So that is where I decided I was going to work really hard, try my hardest to get a scholarship. I ended up getting 3 full rides. So I used 2 of them to go to UCLA. And during my junior year there, I got my internship at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, where I have been since. So I got my job offer, I believe it was about 6 months before I graduated. And I've been having so much fun. I've been learning a lot. I really love to share my story, my journey with everybody. I have my platform on Instagram, and then more recently I started making TikTok videos as well.
Kat, you're who I want to be when I grow up.
Oh, stop, thank you.
And I'm Jamie. I make up the M in STEM, but I'm a little bit of T too. So I'll start from the beginning. I have my undergraduate degree in mathematics. I started at the University of South Florida, but I'm from Michigan, decided it was way too hot down there, and went back to go finish at Eastern Michigan University. And then I took a 2-year-long break before going into my PhD program in computer science at Michigan Tech. And, you know, I didn't really know what to expect at that time. Nobody really talked me through a PhD. It was just something that I thought I should do. And I realized that research is not exactly the world for me. But what I was researching was how to teach computer science to people in the Native American population without diminishing their cultural values. So while doing that work and constantly going out to reservations and working with kids, I realized that teaching is just what I love to do. So I actually just got my master's in computer science. and now I am a high school teacher, and I teach math and computer science. And I'm working on a second master's degree in education from Johns Hopkins. So I've jumped all over the map. So education is my game, just flat out.
Hi, everyone. Oh, yeah, I haven't gone yet. So my name is Nina, and I guess I'm the A in STEAM. So I'm an illustrator, and I focus on trailblazing people in STEM who happen to be women. And this sort of came about from my desire to increase representation and showcase that women really do belong in STEM, and how many fantastic breakthroughs that we've been involved in. So this is my kind of part-time thing, and outside of this, I work in education, and I write educational materials for doctors working in addiction medicine. And I'm really happy to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for your answers. To introduce myself real quick, I'm Shivani, and I am the founder of Let Her Learn, and I'll be co-hosting this panel today. So moving on to our next question for the panelists, why did you choose your field, and what are some cool things that you work on in your profession? In the same order as last time. Mayuko then?
Sure. Sorry, the question was, how did I choose my field and what cool stuff do I get to work on?
Yep.
Got it, cool. So yeah, I kind of serendipitously fell into computer science. When I started college, I was just like, I just want to do something science related. And I originally set out to be like a chem major. That didn't really work out. Neuroscience major. That didn't really work out. And then, so I was talking to like a floor mate in my dorm, and he was like, you should maybe try computer science, like maybe try it out. And so I took an intro class, and that's kind of just how I fell into it. Like, if it wasn't for that friend, I may have never tried it actually. And yeah, I actually just really enjoyed doing computer science. The curriculum was definitely very difficult, but I definitely I'm a very logical thinker. I'm really bad at memorizing things. So biology was out of the question, as well as other fields. And so, yeah, that's kind of how I went with it. I also really was excited about the prospects of working in the tech industry. It was like really up and coming right at the time that I graduated college. So that was a really cool prospect. So yeah, since then, I guess the cool stuff that I get to work on, specifically, I'm a software engineer that makes iOS apps. And so I have worked on like all of the different apps across, like I worked on a tax app once, I worked on an accounting app once, I worked on the Netflix iOS app, if y'all have used that as well. And so I think it's really cool to be able to work on apps like that. Like the reach that you have in the code that you write is amazing. And I really enjoy what we call product development in tech, being able to create products that people use either to help them do something that they can do before or entertain themselves. I think that's really magical and something that is really special to computer science and software engineering, and just writing a few lines of code gets it all out into the world. And so that's kind of the stuff that I've had the honor of being able to work on.
All right, I think it's my turn. So the way that I chose electrical engineering is it's been a journey that has lasted pretty much my whole life. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more, I just posted a video about why I chose EE specifically. But I have always been fascinated by electricity since I was a little kid. So as far back as I can remember, I've been fascinated. I've wanted to know what it is, what are electrons, why the heck are they moving, what is a current, why is this working, how does the TV work, how does my camera work, why does it work? So I've just always been so passionate about it, so interested. I've been electrocuting myself since I was a little kid. So really, it kind of just transitioned as I grew up. I started learning more about it, and my passion just grew. So when I got to high school, that's when I started taking physics, and I took E&M. I took the circuits portion of my physics class, and I wasn't that great at it. You know, I wasn't getting that good up grades as I would have wanted, but I loved it so much. I remember I actually took one of the workbooks from physics home because I wanted to do more problems. I wanted to solve more circuits. I wanted to put some more circuits together. So that's when I really decided that I was going to go through with it. I was going to be an electrical engineer. And I have always been very, very passionate about space. So my idea from the very start was I'm going to be an electrical engineer, but I'm going to work in the aerospace industry. So there never really in my mind was a way that I wouldn't be working in the aerospace industry. So that's really how I got to it. It's been a journey that's been my whole life in the making, pretty much. And when I got to NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab and I started working on the most amazing missions, even as an intern, I really had just found my place. And some of the really cool things that I've been working on, I'll share too. I mentioned I worked on the Perseverance Rover. So the rover's robotic arm is different than Curiosity. Curiosity's arm, it has some sensors because we wanted basically to make sure that we're not hurting the arm. We're not doing anything too strenuous. But for Perseverance, we actually want to be able to use the sensors to help us move the arm, test with the arm. So we needed an amplifier. What we were told is the sensors on this robotic arm are sensitive enough to even detect wind. So we needed an amplifier that was going to help us clean up those signals. So how do we tell if something is lightly touching it versus it's the wind, right? So that's something that I worked on during my internship. And then right now with the Europa Clipper project, I'm working on what is called simulations. So we have the flight computer, and this flight computer needs to be tested before we connect it to the spacecraft. So we simulate the entire spacecraft and connect the computer to it in order to test it, in order to try to break it. So it's really fun. My job is to essentially work on the hardware that completely simulates the spacecraft of a mission. So, I mean, for me, a huge space nerd, I can't think of anything cooler than that. And I saw some of you guys mentioning my dog. Yeah, he's in the background. He's scared of fireworks, so we brought him with us. He is a lab chow mix.
So yeah, my journey into this, well, I've always been a really visual person. Whenever I was studying, I just used to draw everything out. And it wasn't until I moved to London, I really wanted to discover more about the historical people that I was living amongst. So I started drawing these historical figures, and just because of my background in science, I studied biology and developmental biology at university. I just naturally gravitated towards scientists. And as time evolved, I realized that I don't actually hear the stories of women so much, and they deserve to be highlighted. And kind of exciting projects that I get to work on. That's a really good question. I think every time that I end up discovering a new person in STEM, I just get really excited. And having that dialogue with other people who send me people that they've discovered, it's all really exciting to me.
Okay. And so for me, well, I chose my field probably not in the best way. You know, math was the one subject that I was always very consistent with and enjoyed. Everything else kind of bored me, and I didn't really like, especially in college sometimes. I just didn't want to go to those classes, but math was always the one I always wanted to go to. So I was like, man, I should probably major in this if I love it so much. And then I discovered computer science when I went to Eastern Michigan for my math major, because they required an intro to programming class, something that South Florida didn't do at the time. And I had no idea what programming was. It was never introduced to me. All I knew was that it was computers and that there is a lot of these nerdy white boys sitting in the class with me. That's all I understood. But my teacher, she was this super awesome Indian woman, and she's just like super pro like females in tech. So after like my first week in that class, I was like, computer science is so cool. And I was like all about it. So I, talked to my professor about like minoring in it because I wanted to graduate. I didn't want to take another semester to switch my major. So I was like, okay, I want to minor in this. And so, she took an interest in me, and we ended up founding the Women in Computer Science Club at our university. So that was really fun. And that club got me even more interested in computer science. And the fact that I minored in this subject, I was still able to get into a PhD program doing that subject. So I just wanted to kind of just point that out to say, like, you don't have to know what you want to do right away. Like, you can always pivot and it'll be okay. I think that's probably like the biggest lesson I learned from my journey. So I just wanted to make sure that part was clear. But yeah, and so then now, as I mentioned before, working on my PhD, I was like, nah, not for me. So now I teach and I love it. It's honestly the best decision I ever made because it fits me and my personality really well and what I'm interested in. I still get to do math and tech, but I also get to inspire little kids and high schoolers all the time. So that makes me feel really good. And the cool work that I do besides teaching is at the school. Some of us teachers started an organization called Educators for Racial Justice. And so one of my jobs in that org is to make sure that our curriculum is decolonized and anti-racist. So that's something that our high school is really working towards. We have a lot of work to go. So, there's no total results yet. I'll keep you guys updated, but that's kind of like the exciting work that I'm doing right now. And specifically in the math class that I teach, I'm working on finding better ways to incorporate culture and social issues into the math curriculum and just showing students and kids how to take action in social justice while using math to do it. So yeah, that's it.
Hi. I think my thing's working again now, so that's good. If I cut out, I am sorry. I don't know what's happening with my internet. So I am in astrophysics, and how I got into it was kind of in two parts. When I was really young, a kid that would ask so many questions, and it was always really ridiculous questions, like, how did we get here? What's the universe? What's out there? And I'd always ask my mom, parents, teachers, and I remember they were just like, oh, we don't know yet. And I remember that hit me so weird because I'm like, wait, what do you mean? You're an adult, like, you know everything. Like, what do you mean you don't know? And then after just getting that response enough, I'm like, well, that's okay, because you don't have to know, because I'll figure it out myself. And that kind of like pushed me in that direction. And then after that, it was my older brother used to watch all the science documentaries, the novas about, the universe, Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson's The Cosmos. And I remember I just fell in love with that. And then especially on some science class days where the teacher would roll in the TV cart and start playing Bill Nye. I remember I loved those so much. And I was like, I want to learn more. I don't want it to end after a 30-minute episode. I just need to know more. I remember feeling like a sponge when I was younger. And I'm like, that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm going for. I need to know about space. And obviously, when I was looking towards an education branch to go on, the only thing I thought was to do with space was astronomy. So I'm like, okay, astronomy and physics, that's what I'm going to go for. Now I know there's so many different ways to get into the space exploration field. But at the time, I knew it was astronomy, so that's what I went for. And now I mostly just focus, because I am still learning, I do focus on science communication right now, because I remember learning about some crazy things in my first year of university about physics that it just doesn't make sense, but it's how things work, and it blew my mind. I'm like, people need to know about this. So that's when I started with my Instagram and things like that, doing science communication. It was Einstein's quote, if you can't explain something simply, you don't know the subject well enough. So I use that as a learning tool for myself as well, which just makes me more passionate about astronomy, about physics, and about my field. I think one of the coolest projects I have ever worked on wasn't the project itself, but it was the outcome. So it was in one of my courses, we just had a project to observe a galaxy. And the thing that really blew my mind about it is there's something called time dilation. It means the faster your velocity, the slower time travels for your frame of reference, your perspective. And that blew my mind because the implications of that with the project meant I was looking at a galaxy. I was taking pictures of a galaxy that might not even exist anymore because the light takes so long to travel to us, which kind of indirectly proves ghosts, I guess, because you could be looking at light right now and you look out at the stars from a star that's been long dead. And I think that just really blew my mind. So it wasn't the project itself, but it was the outcome of the learning from the project.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the next question. By the way, I absolutely loved hearing all of your responses, and your stories are all so inspiring. I mean, you guys are just incredible. So the next question is, how do you make the case for diversity in your schools and your organization, and what success have you had so far?
So diversity, specifically with my university, the only sort of boundaries or barriers I've ever come across were gender bias. Luckily for me, my university is really good when it comes to that sort of thing. I remember in my first year, there's two things that have particularly happened to me with gender bias. I remember in my first year, it was a math course. And it was a huge 300-person class, and a boy walked up to me. He sat beside me, and he let me know, by the way, if this isn't a degree requirement, I suggest you take an easier version of this math. And that really just hit me like the wrong way because I didn't know this boy. He doesn't know how good I am at math or anything like that. So it was just the fact that he took it upon himself to kind of come forward and say that to me really just hit me wrong. I feel like that's the only time that I've experienced something like that with diversity. I've never had to do too many things other than, like I said, my science communication with the Possum 13 doing the Women in STEM like ambassadors. So my thing is really, it's less about my university and where I go and more just personally trying to push the space exploration. That's for everyone. You know, it's not for a certain economic background. It's not for a certain gender. It's not for a certain religion or anything like that. It's for everyone. And I think because we're still pushing on that front and letting young girls, young women know that you belong here, here's your representation, here's something you can do, is something I really try to push for in my area specifically when talking about physics and astronomy.
In my world, in terms of how do we make the case for diversity in our organization, I mostly kind of think about it at a company level. It's really like heavily talked about in the tech industry in Silicon Valley. And a lot of companies and a lot of organizations are trying different things. And as so far as like the software engineering side of things go, because companies have a bunch of different roles like marketers, HR and stuff. The conversations that I've had with other colleagues who are software engineers, the thing that resonates the most with them is that when you're making a product for someone, especially if it's to a very large audience that's not like a very specific demographic, then you need to have people who reflect that demographic to create that thing. Especially in product development, you're making stuff that other people are going to use and find useful. And so you can't just have like a very homogenous group of people making that thing because it might not actually solve the problem. It might not be a good product. It might be even solving the wrong problem. And so I've heard that that really resonates a lot. And I know that that's been a case or that's been the case that's made to a lot of companies, managers, just the entire industry really. And I find that that's also really helped me in navigating my own diversity discussions in organizations. Some successes that I've had so far, I started really plugging into diversity conversations when I was at Patreon, because as a company of, I think it was like 150 at the time, we really started to talk about this and really feel like, okay, what can we actually do? So I learned a lot there, and then I brought a lot of those learnings to Netflix. And one thing that I'm like really proud of is the team that I had joined at Netflix had kind of started thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion, but hadn't really figured out what can we actually do. There's a lot of education that can be done in learning about race and inequality and gender issues and everything. But like a lot of people in tech are at a loss for like, but what can I do? Like if I don't have the power to hire someone underrepresented, what are the things that I can do? And I really do think it's like the education and the kind of internalization of like, yes, it is really important to have diversity in this industry is like the biggest barrier to get people into that conversation. So I work with a manager to create a series of D&I like events that happened monthly where we really built starting upon relationship building, because conversations about diversity and inclusion are so uncomfortable, especially if people are not used to talking about them, especially if they don't come from an underrepresented background, or maybe they do come from an underrepresented background, but they've never talked about that before, have felt comfortable talking about it. And so in the series, we just kind of like started to establish trust within each other and built relationships so that we can really start having a safe space and people can be vulnerable and feel free to make mistakes in learning about diversity, because like we all start from somewhere and no one is perfect at it. And so we started there and it went really well. We had many events. We started including more parts of the organization and people really started to internalize that, oh my gosh, this is a really important thing. And I think also the thing about diversity work in a company is that like, it can't just be one person or even like all the underrepresented people. It has to be everybody. Like ideas have to come from everywhere. We have to be really creative about this stuff. And so that's been something that I'm really proud of. And I've seen that also happen at many other companies. And it makes me very optimistic for more organizations embracing the importance of diversity.
Yeah, so those are all fantastic points, and I absolutely agree. So I will focus a little bit more on what it is that I'm currently doing right now at my current job to try to promote diversity. So as far as, I kind of agree a little bit more along the lines of what Jupiter said, where for my particular field, I do see more of a gender gap as opposed to a racial gap in terms of diversity. Currently right now, my group, I am one of 2 women on the team, and I am the only woman on the hardware side of things. So something that I've really, really tried to do is have those difficult conversations. It's so important, especially because, you know, a lot of these people are your coworkers, they're also your friends, but once you start kind of having more of a comfortable relationship with them, and you actually ask them the question, so why do you think I'm here? Why do you think I was hired? I asked my coworker this question and the answer shocked me, because this is my friend. This is somebody that vouches for me. This is someone that vouches for my work. I've seen this person, a male coworker, defend me at different times when somebody said something dumb. And his answer still shocked me, because he said, oh, they needed a woman on the team. And you're a woman and you're a woman of color. So that was really, really shocking to me, because this person knows all about my experience, knows all about all of the work that I did throughout my time when I was during, you know, in my internship, even after that, when I got hired. And this is still what they thought was the reason why I was here. So that's just something that was really shocking to me, especially as, you know, as coming from a friend. So having these difficult conversations with people that you think are on your side is something that definitely needs to happen. Also, my parents just got here, so but yeah, so that's something that I started doing, is having those conversations with the people that you think are on your side already. And other than that, I also really try to use my experience, my expertise. I recently hired an intern, so I read through, maybe 200 resumes. And unfortunately, I noticed a trend where women do tend to downplay their accomplishments and their experience compared to men. So that is something that I really try to help a lot of women with, just that confidence factor when explaining their accomplishments. and also especially when it comes to resume writing, interviewing, things like that. So I do have a blog where I talk about all of that stuff. And that's just some of the things that I currently do to try to help with the, diversity issue.
I think with my perspective, it's slightly different in that what I do is trying to kind of mixes art and education. So at the moment, there's been quite a lot of quite shocking studies about representation in textbooks. So especially in the UK, it was highlighted that there's about 40 men who are highlighted from their scientific backgrounds. So either they've got methods named after them or their kind of discoveries are discussed in textbooks, and only 2 women, which is insane. So I'm hoping that by highlighting more women, there's a chance that people have other avenues for education. And I guess in my career as well, it is going into industries where you are underrepresented. And I just want to add that it's really key to have a good support network. So having those conversations with your family to help navigate. So I have had a couple of issues around microaggressions at work, and I really drew on the support from my brother and my parents to get me through it. And also asking your friends as well. It's just so key to have that network. And just to add to that, it's really inspiring as well, seeing other women navigate their careers and to follow them on social media sites. So like Mayuko and Katya and Jupiter and Berger, it's amazing to have these role models and just to remember that you do belong in STEM. I'll hand over to Berger now.
Okay, so how do I make the case for diversity? I told you guys a bit about how I do it at my job now. So I'll tell you about like other ways I've done it. I mean, first of all, I am the case for diversity in a lot of cases. My own life experience is that kind of case for diversity, right? Especially at the university where I did get my master's in computer science. Michigan Tech is not at all a very diverse university. And even in the graduate department, it's not quite diverse there either. So one thing that I did was not only make my research about increasing diversity in my field, but I also joined the graduate student government so that I could be part of a lot of kind of like say that happens among the graduate student body. And what's awesome about that was I also had access to our board of trustees. And if you don't know what that is, it's pretty much all the people with the big money in their pockets. So they're the important people to get at when you're at a university and you want something to happen. So I would wait until I'd get in touch with the board of trustees, and you're at an event, you schmooze them up, and then you tell them about how much it sucks that there's no Black people here, right? Things like that. So there are really awesome ways that even when you guys like apply to university and get into university, there are awesome ways for you guys to kind of work towards that. Because I definitely did it. And, some things they don't want to hear, but I think the most useful thing was telling them how it affects their money. So the career fair was a huge deal. It's a tech engineering school. So we had like a really important career fair. Everybody goes to it. And Toyota, some of the representatives from Toyota had told our school, we like to come here to grab more diversity for our company. But when we come here, we don't get that. And so Toyota's like, all right, I'm about to like bounce out of your guys' career fair. And that's like a lot of job opportunities for the students at my school, right? So me going and telling the board of trustees about that interaction, they were like, oh my gosh, like I never noticed. Now that she's talking about money, I guess I noticed. So, always talk about people's money if it's in corporate in some way, because that's definitely how you'll hit their emotions. I don't know if you guys have heard the term playing with my money is like playing with my emotions. So just kind of assume that that's a thing. And then also, I don't know if somebody mentioned this before, but there were a lot of great points shared about like why we need diversity in tech. So if you girls don't know about the book Algorithms of Oppression, I actually will put a link in the chat box right now. But that's another really good resource to read about and find some like beginning information about how computer science, algorithms, all of that have kind of worked towards oppression. And then, yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So thank you all so much for your answers. These were so inspiring. So now I think we're going to move on to an open forum. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask our panelists?
May I ask one?
Mhm.
I don't know if you guys already like discussed about this in depth, but what are your like what are the ways or the methods that you have to cope with episodes of imposter syndrome?
I have a really good answer for this. Okay, my dog might start barking because my roommate just came home. I'm sorry if he does. I'm looking at him right now. I'm just hoping he doesn't. So with this one is really intense for me just because of the disproportionate amount of men to women in my field, specifically with astrophysics. It almost makes me feel like it's kind of bittersweet. It makes me push myself harder. It makes me want to prove myself, but so it does help me. But at the same time, I feel like I shouldn't have to do that. That shouldn't be, my driving force. And then with STEAM specifically, as opposed to other fields, I think we have a very bias when it comes to imposter syndrome, just because science is one of those things where we think they're the smartest of the smartest people, we as in a community. It's if you're a physicist, if you're an engineer, if you're any of those things, oh, you went through a lot of schooling, you're really smart, so you can't be wrong ever. And I think it creates an imposter syndrome on the educational side because in my first year, I failed a math course. So from then on, I believe like I wasn't cut out for science because I failed, and scientists do not fail at math. So I just had that kind of an initial thing, and based off of that, I started looking into when you hear about something great in science, you hear about the success, you see the headlines, you see we took the first picture of a black hole, you see we created this AI, you see all the crazy successes. What they don't highlight, because it's not clickbait or anything like that, is you never hear about the 100 times before where that person failed and that person wasn't able to reach their goal. It took them, 100 times before they got their success. And we don't highlight that, which I think is really strange. So on the educational side, it can be really discouraging for people trying to learn because they assume if they don't get it right away, they aren't cut out. And that's where imposter syndrome really hits me. I created a blog called STEM Steps where I've been highlighting people who are successful in their STEAM field and saying like, tell me about your success and tell me about all the failure that it took for you to get there, to encourage other people to keep going and not assume that they're not cut out for science just because, I don't catch it right away, or look at this project didn't turn out the way I wanted to, or my research isn't as good as, this person's, and my write-up's not as good. I think it's really important to highlight the failures as a way to combat the imposter syndrome, because everyone belongs in STEAM if that's their passion, if that's what they want to do. But I really think only highlighting the successes in the STEAM category is what creates a big piece of the imposter syndrome. I don't know if you guys know of Kelly Girardi on Instagram, but she said that she went to some sort of dinner and there was the first man on the moon there, and he said to her, like, I don't think I belong at this dinner, look at all these smart people. And if the first man to land on the moon can get imposter syndrome, then I feel a little bit better about it.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Okay. So I actually have two questions, but they're kind of related. So the first one is like with all the gender bias and stuff in the STEM fields, if there is like more opportunities for like a male, but then the girl wants to do the same thing, but there isn't that, what should she do in that situation? Like, should she look for something or should she try something herself? And then the second question was, if we want to go into a certain STEM field, like for example, computer science, I'm passionate about it, but if I don't like math too much, should I let that leave me behind, or should, even though I'm willing to work hard for it, should I let that leave me behind?
I would love to hear Jamie's perspective, but I'll share mine from the computer science, like just purely computer science part. I've made a whole video about this, is like, do you have to be good at math for software engineering? I think it really depends on the area of software engineering and computer science you go into. If you go into like game development, you're doing some hardcore graphic stuff, like, yeah, like you're gonna need a little bit of math. If you go into AI stuff, yes, there's like definitely math there. I went into iOS development, like very minimal math. Like the hardest math I did was probably like trigonometry maybe in my work. Doesn't mean that like I didn't have to like take math, because I definitely did have to take some prerequisite math classes as my undergrad, which I don't use anymore at all, and each school has different requirements, but I think it really just depends. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because you don't really necessarily have to be good at math, but just like Meiko said, like if you are in certain branches of tech and computer science, you definitely do. And you know, those are exactly what she mentioned. I would also maybe add on, if you were like maybe in operating systems as well. That might be another area where it's helpful to be good at math. But there are a lot of areas in computer science where you can be successful and not have to be like a top mathematician, but having a general understanding of, you know, mathematical structures and procedures and functions and stuff like that are helpful. You just don't have to like go so hard.
Totally. And I like one thing that maybe is like related to math. I don't think of this as math, but it is related, I think, is like logic. Like the ability to think logically is actually like one of the fundamental things about computer science. So I think that's probably the most important like mathy skill. But yeah, anything above that, it's like very like specialized depending on the field.
Sorry, just real quick for the math thing. I think, like I said, I did fail my first math course ever in university. I think it's really important to not believe you're either good at math or you're not good at math. Sure, some people pick it up a lot easier than others because their brains just work in that way. But if it's something you're super passionate about, you can't look at it like, I'm bad at math, so I can't do this. You have to look at it at, I'm not the best at math right now. However, I'm going to put in the time, put in the study hours, put in the effort, because this is something I'm super passionate about. I was not good at math, and now I think I have at least my foot in the door because I put in the hours. Sure, I had to study more than some of my peers, but that doesn't mean it's not attainable for me. You're not born good at math or not good at math. You can definitely work at it and enhance those skills.
I just wanted to add as well, just because you mentioned about gender bias, just to reiterate that apply anyway for something. Don't worry about the numbers. It's just important to put yourself out there and persevere, because the numbers have to change at some point and you may as well be part of that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
May I ask a question?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go ahead. And this could probably be our last question.
Okay, so what would you recommend high school students do if they aspiring to enter the aerospace industry?
Yeah, so this is something that I talk to everybody that asks me anything about the space industry, how to break into it, that it's their interest. So as far as most of the space companies or even NASA that I know about, it's not just you need to be skilled, which you do. You need to be skilled, you need to have your experience, but that's not the most important thing. You need to be passionate about what you're doing, especially at a place like NASA, where, you know, you're not doing this to make a corporation rich. You're doing this because you're interested in the exploration, you're interested in the science, you're interested in the missions. So doing anything that you can to really show that initiative, to show that passion. And you can do that as young as you know, as young as you are now. You can do that in high school, you can do that in middle school. There are so many different ways to do it, different personal projects, build a model rocket, go online and start learning a new programming language, go and try to see what is it that the people in industry are currently doing. For example, the reason that I got my internship is because when I applied for internships my first summer at UCLA, I did not get a single one. So I said, okay, instead of moping about it, I'm going to take that as constructive criticism, and I'm going to say there was clearly something that I was missing. There was something that maybe somebody else had that was a better fit for it. So I took the summer and learned an entire skill that I knew was important for the field. So I learned how to use PCB design tools. And so it was that initiative that really got me my internship, because they were impressed not only that I knew how to use this tool, that I did it on my own. I took it like a full-time job. I spent an entire summer on it. So it's that initiative, that passion. When you get your interview, it's really important that you really convey, I love this. Like I mentioned, I recently hired an intern for a summer research project that I'm helping lead. And I had so many people during the interview that would say things like, you know, I'm really interested in engineering, and I'm kind of just trying to see if the space industry is something that might work for me. But that's really not what we want to hear when we're hiring for something, you know, like some of these really, really cool missions. So you may be super skilled, you might have a 4.0, but if I don't hear it in your voice that you're really passionate about this and that this is what you really want to do with your career, then it kind of just like a switch that gets turned off in my mind as an interviewer. So taking initiative, doing personal projects on your own with whatever weekend time that you may have. And when you do get that foot in the door, making sure that you let them know, I am so passionate about this. This is what I really want to do. This is what I love. And that will take you so far. And just really quickly, going back to the math thing, I really want to just agree with everything that everyone said, and especially Jupiter, because I truly believe that math is a skill. There are people I know that, you know, have a more of a natural ability. I am not one of those people. And I'm going to share really quick a story that my philosophy teacher shared with us, which was, he asked everybody around the room to let him know, how old were you when you started growing a fear of math? And so people started saying, you know, I was in the 3rd grade, I was in the 4th grade, I was, you know, 8 years old. And so he ended that and he said, okay, so I'm going to bring in a 5th grader, and I'm going to tell this 5th grader is going to choose your career for you. Are you going to listen to them? And obviously we said no. And he said, so your fear of math, your anxiety of math, you're letting that person that you were when you developed this fear, when you were 7 or 8 years old, you're letting that person choose your career for you. And so that's something that really stuck with me. And after that, I kind of switched my mindset about math and the math anxiety that I had. You know, I'm not bad at math. I need to practice more. I need to develop that skill.
All right, thank you guys so much for this really insightful and amazing panel. I
also have a question.
Oh, I'm so sorry, but we have our next panel starting right now. So to unfortunately end this panel. But if you guys have any questions, we tagged every single person on Instagram, so you can reach out via DM to them. And yeah, thank you guys so much for attending this panel. We'll be having our Breaking into Tech event right now. So if you want to stay for that, stay in the Zoom. But if not, you can leave the Zoom and then come back for the event that you want to. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank
It
you
was
so
really
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.